Alright everybody, welcome back to another retrospective video, and today we are going to be talking about Sonic the Hedgehog, the original Sonic the Hedgehog. And I must apologize ahead of time if my voice sounds a little funky. It's simply because I'm battling a cold while recording this, but we're not going to let a little thing like a cold get in the way, because that's basically the way we do things around here. We're passionate about it and we go to it. And also just wanted to give a heads up that the formula for this will be me giving my personal my personal experiences with the game in conversation style, obviously, and then we get right into the nitty-gritty of the retrospective material in terms of research. And then after that, I offer my final thoughts. And also another heads up, I do this uncut. So there may be a few times where there's going to be, you know, anywhere from 3 to 6 seconds of pause time due to getting some water and all that good stuff, because I prefer to do this as if having a presentation in front of you live, or if you were in front of me, or through like in a form of conversation. That's just the way we do things around here, and that's how it gets done. So without further ado, we're going to get right into it, because this is going to be a long one, because there's a lot of retrospective research, so to speak, and there's a lot to say about this game, just like there is in every other game. So let's get right to it. So Sonic the Hedgehog, when I first played Sonic the Hedgehog, I was about 8 years old, give or take. And back then there was no internet. I'm 38 now. And back then there was no internet. So basically the way that you would find out about new games is mostly through friends. You would also find out on TV, if you happen to just see it on TV through commercials and stuff like that, about games or consoles. But for the most part, you would find out about it through friends. So one day I go to my friend's house, which was a normal thing that I did back in the day as a kid. I'm sure a lot of you guys probably do the same, especially when you were at that age, I'm assuming. So I went to my friend's house, and he had a new system called the Sega Genesis. I guess he got it for his birthday or whatever it was. And guess what game he was playing? He was playing Sonic the Hedgehog. And one of the things that absolutely stood out to me about this game, to this day actually, that has an impact on me, is the fact that the music really just stood out. And I love the music, and it fit in really perfectly with the color palette, with the backgrounds of the game, and as well as the way the game played. To this day, I still believe that overall, and this is very hard to say because there are so many great games out there with so many good music tracks that are amazing, but I would probably have to say overall that Sonic the Hedgehog over the years, especially when you look at the classics, is not only among the best, but arguably the best. And it kind of just really depends on the type of music that you prefer or in the mood for. But overall, when it comes down to it, it just fit in so well. And I got to give the composer props. It was just such a really good fit. So, and the gameplay was faster. Obviously, Sega's main goal was to have something to compete with Mario, a mascot of their own, so to speak. And they certainly succeeded. And before hitting the record button on this, I've obviously read a whole bunch about this, which I'm going to share with you in just a few minutes. But this franchise, the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise, over the years has not only hasn't just had a lot of games, but has also had a lot of ups and downs. And I am actually a person that actually owned every single Sega console, regardless of the fact that that a lot of them weren't as popular. I've actually, throughout my childhood, I was very lucky before things got tough, and then even after things got tough, I still kind of managed somehow to have every single Sega console. And I don't regret it one bit. Obviously, knowing what I know now, I would have made a few changes here and there. But I've had the Sega Saturn, I've had the Dreamcast, I've had the Sega CD, I've had the 32X, I've had the original Genesis. I even had the portable, the Game Gear, which was huge and used to hold 6 batteries at a time. And overall, I've had an amazing experience, and it all basically started with Sonic, and it kind of went from there. But we're going to get right into the research of this, and I have to say that Sonic the Hedgehog is, in my opinion, despite the fact that the franchise has had its ups and downs, and everything that happened with Sega, that they no longer produce consoles and everything, I have to say that Sonic the Hedgehog overall as a franchise is one of the best to ever exist, and it still has potential to this day. And obviously right now, with the release of the recent Sonic Frontiers, it's starting to scratch the surface of the potential that it could possibly reach. But overall, it's had a lot of ups and downs when it comes to 2D and when it comes to 3D and everything like that. But back in the day, Sonic the Hedgehog was a lot like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in the 90s. Sonic was amazing for the Sega platform, simple as that. And pretty much every single kid that owned a Sega definitely owned Sonic. And whenever the next game would come out, you would hear about it with your kid neighbors whenever you were out playing, in the neighborhood or whatnot. That's how I heard about Sonic 2. So about Sonic the Hedgehog 2, which was a sequel. And then the first Sonic, as I said, went over to a friend's house, and then I basically rinsed and repeat the same strategy for years to get what I wanted as a kid. I was very blessed up until things started to change later on, but that's a different story. But for the most part, I would put my puppy dog face on, or I would try harder in school to get better grades, and I'd be like, hey, I want this. If my report card is this, can I get this or something like that? I would do whatever I could in order to make it possible for me to get whatever I needed to get video game wise, because it was one of my main forms of entertainment, and video games has remained a passion throughout my life, throughout all these 30 plus years. So let's get right into it, because we're already deep and we got a long way to go until today's video finishes. So we're going to get right into the retrospective research, so to speak, and that's how I'm going to read it to you. And then after that, I will offer my final thoughts, and then we will be done. So fasten your seatbelts, grab a snack if you need to, or whatever, because we're going to be in it for a long run. And if you're listening, I hope you enjoy listening, and I will do my best to keep it clear as possible, despite the cold. And let's get right into it. So what is Sonic the Hedgehog, right? So Sonic the Hedgehog is basically a Japanese video game series and media franchise created by Sega. The franchise follows Sonic, an anthropomorphic blue hedgehog who battles the evil Dr. Eggman, and who's basically a mad scientist. The main Sonic the Hedgehog games are platformers, mostly developed by Sonic Team. Other games developed by various studios include spin-offs in the racing, fighting, and party and sports genres. The franchise also incorporates printed media, animations, feature films, and merchandise. So, lots and lots of media for Sonic the Hedgehog. And Sega developed the first Sonic game, released in 1991 for the Sega Genesis, to compete with Nintendo's mascot Mario. Its success helped Sega become one of the leading video game companies during the fourth generation of video game consoles in the early 1990s. Sega Technological Institute developed the next 3 Sonic games, plus the spin-off Sonic Spinball, which came out in 1993. A number of Sonic games were also developed for Sega's 8-bit consoles, the Master System, and Game Gear. After hiatus during the unsuccessful Saturn era, the first major 3D Sonic game, Sonic Adventure, was released in 1998 for the Dreamcast. Sega exited the console market and shifted to third-party development in 2001, continuing this series on Nintendo, Xbox, and PlayStation systems. While Sonic games have often unique game mechanics and stories, they feature recurring elements such as the ring-based health system, level locales, and fast-paced gameplay. Games typically feature Sonic setting up to stop Eggman's schemes for world domination, basically. And the player navigates levels that include springs, slopes, bottomless pits, and vertical loops. Later games added a large cast of characters as well, some such as Miles Tails Prower, Knuckles the Echidna, and Shadow the Hedgehog have starred in spin-offs. The franchise has crossed over into other video game franchises and games such as Mario and Sonic, Sega All-Stars, and Super Smash Bros. Sonic the Hedgehog is Sega's flagship franchise and one of the best-selling video game franchises, selling over 140 million units by 2016 and grossing over $6 billion as of 2020. Series sales of free-to-play mobile game downloads totaled 1.5 billion as of 2022. The Genesis Sonic games have been described as representative of the culture of the 1990s and listed among the greatest of all time. Although later games, notably in the 2006 reboot, received poor reviews, Sonic is influential in the video games industry and is frequently referred in popular culture. The franchise is known for its fandom, and that sources the unofficial media such as fan art and fan games. So there's a lot of history with Sonic the Hedgehog, and we're going to start from 1990 and 1991, basically titled Conception and the first game. By 1990, the Japanese video game company Sega wanted basically a foothold on the video game console market and its 16-bit console, the Sega Genesis. Sega's efforts have been stemmed by the dominance of Nintendo. The Genesis did not have a large install base, and Nintendo did not take Sega seriously as a competitor at the time. Sega of America's CEO Michael Katz adopted the challenge Nintendo with the Genesis does what Nintendo don't. marketing campaign, and collaborating with athletes and celebrities to create games. These efforts did not break Nintendo's dominance, however, and Katz was replaced by Tom Kalinske, formerly of Mattel. Sega president Hayao Naokama decided Sega needed a flagship series and mascot to compete with Nintendo's Mario franchise. Nintendo had recently released Super Mario Bros. 3 at the time and was the best-selling video game ever. Sega's strategy had been based on porting its successful arcade games to the Genesis. However, Nikayama recognized that Sega needed a star character in a game that could demonstrate the power of the Genesis hardware. An internal contest was held to determine a flagship game, with a focus on the American audience. Among the teams working the proposals were artist Naoto Oshima and programmer Yuji Naka. The gameplay of Sonic the Hedgehog in 1991 originated with a tech demo created by Naka and had developed an algorithm that allowed Sprite to move smoothly on a curve by determining its position with a dot matrix. Naka's prototype was a platform game that involved a fast-moving character rolling in a ball through a long, winding tube. Sega management accepted the duo's project and they were joined by designer Hirokazu Yakashura. After Yasuhara joined Naka and Oshima, their focus was to shift it to the protagonist, who Sega hoped would become its mascot. The protagonist was initially a rabbit able to grasp objects with prehensile ears, but the concept proved too complex for the hardware. The team moved on to the animals that could roll into a ball and eventually settled on Sonic, a teal hedgehog created by Oshima. Naka's prototype was explained with Oshima's character design and the levels conceived by Yoshihara. Sonic's color was chosen to match Sega's cobalt blue logo, and his red and white shoes were inspired by the cover of Michael Jackson's 1987 album, Bad. His personality was based off of Bill Clinton's can-do attitude. The antagonist, Dr. Eggman, was another character Oshima was designed for the contest. The team thought the abandoned design was excellent, and the character Oshima had redesigned it as a villain. The team took the name Sonic Team for the game's release. Sonic's first appearance came in Sega's AM3 racing game, Rad Mobile, in 1991, 5 months before the release of Sonic the Hedgehog, as an ornament hanging from the driver's rearview mirror. The Sonic developers let AM3 use Sonic because they were interested in making him visible to the public. According to Mark Kenry, who worked in Tokyo as an intermediary between the Japanese and American offices, the American staff felt that Sonic had no appeal. Although Katz was certain that Sonic would not be popular with the American children, Kalinske arranged that it places Sonic the Hedgehog as a pack-in game with the Genesis. Featuring speedy gameplay, Sonic the Hedgehog received critical acclaim. It greatly increased the popularity of the Sega Genesis in North America, credited with helping Sega gain 65% of the market share against Nintendo. When it comes to 1981 to 1995, we had Genesis sequels. Naka was dissatisfied with his treatment at the Sega and received little credit for his involvement with the success. He quit, but was hired by Kenry to work on Sonic the Hedgehog 2, which came out in 1992, in which this happened in November of 1991. Level artist Yasuhiro Kamamuchi designed Sonic's new sidekick, Tails, a flying two-headed fox inspired by the mythological kitsune. Like its predecessor, Sonic the Hedgehog 2 was a major success, but its development suffered from the language barrier and cultural differences between the Japanese and American developers. While STI developed Sonic 2, Oshihima had a team in Japan to create Sonic CD for the Genesis CD-ROM accessory, the Sega CD. It was conceived as an enhanced port of Sonic 2, but evolved into a separate project. Once development on Sonic 2 concluded, Ernie departed and was replaced by Roger Hector. STI divided into two teams, the Japanese developers, led by Naka, and the American developers. The Japanese began work on Sonic the Hedgehog 2 and was initially developed as an isometric game using the Sega Virtual Processing chip, but was restarted as a more conventional side-scrolling game after the chip was delayed. It introduced Sonic's rival, Knuckles, created by the artist Takahashi Thomas Yuda. Due to an impending promotion with McDonald's and cartridge size constraints, the project was split into two. The first half, Sonic 3, was released in February of 1994, and the second, Sonic & Knuckles, a few months later. The Sonic & Knuckles cartridge contains an adapter that allows players to connect to Sonic 3, creating a combined game. Sonic 3 and Knuckles, Sonic 3 and Sonic 3 and Knuckles was their predecessors, were acclaimed. To release the Sonic game for the time in 1993 holiday shopping season, Sega commissioned the American team to make a new game, a spin-off Sonic Spinball. While Sonic Spinball received poor reviews, it sold well and helped build the reputation of its developers. A number of Sonic games were developed by Sega's 8-bit consoles, the Master System, and a handheld Game Gear. The first, an 8-bit version of the game, an 8-bit version of the original Sonic, was developed by Ancient to promote the Game Gear and released in December of 1991. Aspect Co. developed most of the subsequent 8-bit Sonic games, beginning with a version of Sonic 2. Other Sonic games released during this period include Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine, which came out in 1993, a Western localization of the Japanese puzzle game Fiu Fiu in 1991, Piu Piu in 1991. Sega Sonic the Hedgehog, 1993, an arcade game featuring isometric gameplay, and Knuckles Chaotix, which came out in 1995, a spin-off of the Genesis 32X add-on starring Knuckles. When it comes down to 1995 and 1998, we had the Sega Saturn era. Following the release of Sonic and Knuckles, Yasuhara quit Sega and Naga returned to Japan, having been offered a role as a producer. He was reunited with Yoshima and brought with him Takashi Izukuwa, who had worked on Naka's team at STI. With Naka's return, Sonic Team was officially formed as a brand. Sonic Team began to work on a new intellectual property, Nights into Dreams, 1996, for Sega's 32-bit Saturn console. In 1996, towards the end of the Genesis lifecycle, Sega released Sonic 3D Blast, an isometric game based on the original Sonic 3 concept, as the system still had a large install base. It was the final Sonic game produced for the Sega Genesis and was developed as a swan song for the system. Since Sonic Team was preoccupied with Nights into Dreams, 3D Blast was outsourced in the British studio Traveller's Tales. While 3D Blast sold well, it was criticized for its gameplay, controls, and slow pace. Meanwhile, in America, STI worked on Sonic Extreme, a 3D Sonic game for the Saturn intended for the 1996 holiday shopping season. Development was hindered by disputes between Sega of America and Japan. Naka's reported a refusal to let STI use Knight's game engine, and problems adapting the series to 3D after two lead developers became ill. Extreme was cancelled. Journalists and fans have speculated about the impact of Extreme might have if it was released, with producer Mike Walls believing it definitely could have been competitive with the first 3D Mario game, Super Mario 64, which came out in 1996. Due to Extreme's cancellation, Sega ported Sonic 3D Blast to the Saturn, with updated graphics and bonus levels developed by Sonic Team. In 1997, Sega announced Project Sonic, a promotional campaign aimed for increasing market awareness and for renewing excitement for the Sonic brand. The first Project Sonic's release was Sonic Jam, a compilation of the main Genesis Sonic games, which included a 3D overworld Sonic Team used to experiment while 3D Sonic gameplay. Sonic Team and Traveller's Tales collaborated again for the second Project Sonic game, Sonic R, a 3D racing game and only the original Sonic game for the Saturn. Sonic Jam was well received, while Sonic R's reviews were more divided. The cancellation of the Sonic Extreme, as well as Saturn's general lack of Sonic games, are considered important factors in the Saturn's commercial failure. According to Nick Thrope of Retro Gamer, by mid-1997, Sonic had essentially been shuffled into the background. It was astonishing to see that just 6 years after its debut, Sonic was already retro. In 1998 to 2005, we had a transition into 3D. With its Sonic Jam experiments, Sonic Team began developing a 3D Sonic platform for the Saturn. The project stemmed from a proposal by Izuka to develop a Sonic role-playing video game RPG. With an emphasis on storytelling, development moved to Sega's new console, the Dreamcast, which Naka believed would allow for the ultimate Sonic game. Sonic Adventure, directed by Izuka and released in 1998, was one of the first sixth-generation video games. It introduced elements that became series staples, such as artist Yuki Uekawa's new character designs influenced by comics and animation. In 1999, Iizuka left and 11 other Sonic team members relocated to San Francisco and established Sonic Team USA to develop the more action-oriented Sonic Adventure 2, which came out in 2001. Between the releases, Oshima left Sega to form Artoon. While both adventure games were well received, the first sold over 2 million copies. Consumer interest in the Dreamcast games were well received, were well faded, and the Sega's attempts to spur sales through lower prices and cash rebates caused escalating financial losses. In January of 2001, Sega announced that it was discontinuing the Dreamcast to become a third-party developer. The following December, Sega released an expanded port of Sonic Adventure 2 for Nintendo's GameCube. Afterwards, Sonic Team USA developed the first multi-platform Sonic game, Sonic Heroes, which came out in 2003 for the GameCube, Microsoft's Xbox, and Sony's PlayStation 2. The game, again directed by Iizuka, was designed for a broad audience, and Sonic Team revived elements that not seen since the Genesis era, such as special stages and the Chaotix characters. Reviews for Sonic Heroes were mixed. While its graphics and gameplay were praised, critics felt that it failed to address the problems of previous Sonic games, such as the camera. Iizuka later reflected that developing Heroes was the most stressful experience in his career. He lost 22 pounds due to the crunch conditions he worked under. Sonic Team also ported Sonic Adventure with additional content to the GameCube in 2003 and Windows in 2004 to mixed reviews. Sega continued to release 2D Sonic games. In 1999, it collaborated with SNK to produce Sonic the Hedgehog Pocket Adventure, an adaptation of Sonic 2 for the Neo Geo Pocket Color. Some SNK staff formed DIMPS the following year and developed original 2D Sonic games, Sonic Advance in 2001, Sonic Advance 2 in 2002, and Sonic Advance 3 in 2004 for Nintendo's Game Boy Advance. Sonic Advance was the first original Sonic game released in the Nintendo console after Sega and Nintendo's fierce rivalry in the 1990s. It was outsourced to DIMPS because Sonic Team was understaffed, with employees familiar with the Game Boy Advance. DIMPS also developed Sonic Rush in 2005 for the Nintendo DS, which uses a 2.5D perspective. DIMPS projects received fairly favorable reviews. To introduce older games to new fans, Sonic Team developed two compilations, Sonic Mega Compilation in 2002 and Sonic Gems Collection in 2005. Further spin-offs included party game Sonic Shuffle in 2000, the pinball game Sonic Pinball Party in 2003, and the fighting game Sonic Battle in 2003. When it goes on to 2005 through 2010, there were franchise struggles. Sonic Team USA was renamed Sega Studios USA after completing Sonic Heroes. Sega and Sonic Team leadership became the constant flux while they began experimenting with diverging from the established Sonic formula. Sega Studios USA first posed Heroes project, Shadow the Hedgehog, which came out in 2005, a spin-off starring the popular Adventure 2 character Shadow. While Shadow retains most elements from previous Sonic games, it was aimed at a mature audience and introduced third-person shooting and non-linear gameplay. Shadow the Hedgehog was panned for its controls, level design, and mature themes, but was a commercial success, selling at least 1.59 million units. For the franchise's 15th anniversary in 2006, Sonic Team developed Sonic Riders, Sonic the Hedgehog, and a Game Boy Advance port of the original Sonic Riders, and the first Sonic racing game since Sonic R was designed to appeal to extreme sports fans as well as regular Sonic fans. With a more realistic setting in previous entries, Sonic the Hedgehog, commonly referred to as Sonic 2006, was intended to reboot the series for 7th generation consoles such as the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3. The development faced serious problems. Naka, the last of the original Sonic development team, redesigned the head of Sonic Team from Probe, and the team split into so the work began on Nintendo Wii's Sonic game according to development of the team. And then Iizuka in these incidents, coupled with straight Sega deadlines and unpolished game engine, forced Sonic Team to rush development. None of the 15th anniversary Sonic games were successful critically, and Sonic of '06 became regarded as the worst game in the series, and for its bugs, camera controls, and story. Brian Shea of Game Informer wrote that it became synonymous with the struggles of the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise had faced in recent years. Sonic of 2006 was meant to be a return for the series' roots, but it ended up damning the franchise in the eyes of many. The first Sonic game for the Wii, Sonic and the Secret Rings, which came out in 2007, takes place in the world of Arabian Nights and was released instead of a port of Sonic 06. Citing lengthy development times, Sega switched plans and conceived a game that would use the motion detector of the Wii remote. Sega released a sequel, Sonic and the Black Knight, in the world of King Arthur in 2009. Secret Rings and Black Knight from what was known of the Sonic Storybook subseries. A Sonic Riders sequel, Zero Gravity, which came out in 2008, was developed for the Wii and the PlayStation 2. Dimps returned to the Sonic series with Sonic Rush Adventure, a sequel to Sonic Rush in 2007, while BioWare developed the first Sonic RPG, Sonic Chronicles. The Dark Brotherhood of 2008, also for the DS, Backbone Entertainment developed two Sonic games exclusive to the PlayStation Portable, Sonic Rivals in 2006 and Sonic Rivals 2 in 2007. Following Naka's departure, Akinori Yorishima, who worked on the Sonic Advance and Rush games, became Sonic Team's general manager. Sonic began working on Sonic Unleashed, which came out in 2008, and production began in 2005. It was conceived as a sequel to Adventure 2, but became a standalone entry after Sonic Team introduced innovations to separate it from the adventure games. With Unleashed, Sonic Team sought to combine the best parts of 2D and 3D Sonic games to address criticisms of previous 3D titles. Although reviews were mixed due to the addition of the beat-em-up game mode and with Sonic transforms into a werewolf-like beast, after Hiroshima was promoted in 2010, Izuka was installed as the head of Sonic Team and became the Sonic's producer. 2010 until present, refocusing, and new directions. Izuka felt that Sonic was struggling because it lacked unified direction, so Sonic Team refocused on more traditional side-scrolling elements and fast-paced gameplay. Sonic the Hedgehog 4, a side-scrolling episodic sequel to Sonic & Knuckles, co-developed by Sonic Team and Dimps, began with Episode 1 in 2010, followed by Episode 2 in 2012. Later in 2010, Sega released Sonic Colors for the Wii and the DS, which explained on the well-received aspects of Unleashed and introduced the Wisp power-ups. For the series' 20th anniversary in 2011, Sega released Sonic Generations for the Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, and Windows. A separate version was developed by Dimps for the Nintendo 3DS. Sonic Generations featured reimagined versions of the levels of previous Sonic games and reintroduced the classic Sonic design from the Genesis era. These efforts were well received, especially in comparison to Sonic 06 and Unleashed. In May of 2013, Nintendo announced that it was collaborating with Sega to produce Sonic games for its Wii U and 3DS platforms. The first game in the partnership in 2013, Sonic Lost World, was also the first Sonic game for 8th generation hardware. Sonic Lost World was designed to be streamlined and fluid in movement and design, borrowing elements from Nintendo's Super Mario Galaxy games and the cancelled Extreme. The second was Mario and the Sonic at the Sochi 2014 Olympic Winter Games in 2013 for the Wii U. The fourth, Mario and Sonic game, and the 2014 Winter Olympics tie-in Crystal for the 3DS, these games were based on Sonic Boom television series. Sonic Lost World polarized critics, while critics found Mario and Sonic at the Sochi 2014 Olympic Winter Games mediocre, and panned the Sonic Boom games. Sonic Boom Fire and Ice Shattered Crystal sequel was released in 2016. Sega began to release more Sonic games for mobile phones, such as the iOS and Android devices. After Australian programmer Christian Taxman Whitehead developed a version of Sonic CD for modern consoles in 2011, he collaborated with fellow Sonic fan Simon Stealth Homley to develop remasters of the original Sonic the Hedgehog and Sonic the Hedgehog 2 for iOS and Android, which were released in 2013. The remasters were developed using Whitehead's Retro Engine, an engine tailored for 2D projects, and received praise. Sonic Dash in 2013, a Temple Run style endless runner, was developed by Hardlight and downloaded over 350 million times by 2020, and received the Sonic Boom themed sequel in 2015. Sonic Team released Sonic Runners for the first game for mobile devices in 2015. Sonic Runners was also an endless runner, but was unsuccessful, and was discontinued a year after release. Gameloft released a sequel, Sonic Runners Adventure, in 2017 to generally positive reviews. In a 2015 interview with Polygon, Iizuka acknowledged that contemporary Sonic games have been disappointing. He hoped from then on that the Sonic Team logo would stand as a mark of quality. He planned to release quality games and expanded the Sonic brand, while retaining the modern Sonic design. Iizuka, the most Sonic team, relocated to Burbank, California to oversee the franchise with a new team. At the San Diego Comic-Con in July of 2016, Sega announced 2 Sonic games to coincide with the series' 25th anniversary, Sonic Mania and Sonic Forces. Both were released for the games, and the headcanon was self-compromising members of the Sonic fandom. Whitehead conceived the project and served as director. The game, which emulates the gameplay and visuals of the Genesis entries, received the best reviews for Sonic game in 15 years. Meanwhile, Sonic Team, which emulates the gameplay and visuals from the Genesis era, received the best reviews for a Sonic game. Let me rephrase that. Meanwhile, Sonic Team developed Sonic Forces, which revives the dual gameplay for Sonic Generations, along with third gameplay style featuring the player's custom character. Sonic Forces received mixed reviews, with criticism for its short length. In 2019, Sega released a kart racing game, Team Sonic Racing, which came out in 2019, developed by Sumo Digital. In May of 2021, Sega announced several projects for the series' 30th anniversary, including a remaster of Sonic Colors, the compilation Sonic Origins, and the 2022 game Sonic Frontiers. Frontiers was the first Sonic game to feature open-world inspired design, and Iizuka expressed hope that it would inform future games in the similar way of Sonic Adventure. Frontiers received moderately positive reviews, with critics and fans considering it a flawed but solid new direction for the franchise, and sold strongly. In 2023, Sega released The Murder of Sonic the Hedgehog, a free point-and-click visual novel game. Water break. And we're back. So as far as characters and story goes, the Sonic franchise is known for its large cast of characters. Sonic Fighters, 1996, producer Yu Shuki joked that anyone that makes a Sonic game has a duty to create new characters. The first game introduced Sonic, a blue hedgehog who can run at incredible speeds, and Dr. Eggman, a rotund mad scientist. During the Genesis era, Eggman was referred to as Dr. Evo Robotnik in Western territories. Sega of America's Dean Sitton made the change without consulting the Japanese developers, who did not want a single character to have 2 different names. Since Sonic Adventure, the character has been referred to as Eggman in all territories, although the Robotnik name is still acknowledged. Sonic games traditionally follow Sonic's efforts to stop Eggman, who schemes to obtain the Chaos Emeralds, 7 emeralds with magical powers. The emeralds can turn thoughts into power, warp time and space with a technique called Chaos Control, give energy to living things, and be used to create nuclear or laser-based weaponry. They typically act as MacGuffins in the stories. Eggman seeks the emeralds in the quest to conquer the world, and traps animals and aggressive robots in prison capsules. Because Sonic Team was inspired by the culture of the 1990s, Sonic features environmental themes. Sonic represents nature, while Eggman represents machinery, and Sonic features, and development, a play on then growing debate between environmentalists and developers. Much of the supporting cast was introduced in the succeeding games of the Genesis and its add-ons. Sonic 2 introduced Sonic's sidekick Miles Tails Prower, a fox who can fly using 2 tails. Sonic CD introduced Amy Rose, a pink hedgehog and Sonic's self-proclaimed girlfriend, and Metal Sonic, a robotic doppelganger of Sonic, created by Eggman. Sonic 3 introduced Sonic rival Knuckles, a red echidna, and the guardian of the Master Emerald. The Master Emerald, introduced in Sonic and Knuckles, controls the power of the Chaos Emeralds. Knuckles Chaotix introduced the Chaotix, a group of comprising of SBO the Chameleon, Vector the Crocodile, and Charmy Bee. A number of characters are introduced during this period, such as the Mighty Armadillo, the Ray Fine Flying Squirrel from Sega Sonic the Hedgehog, and Flag the Sniper from Sonic Triple Trouble, which came out in 1994. Faded into obscurity, although they sometimes reappear. During Sonic Adventure's development, Sonic discovered that the relatively simple character designs did not suit a 3D environment. The art style was modernized to alter the characters' proportions and make them appeal to Western audiences. Since Sonic Adventure the series cast as has expanded, notable characters include Big, a large cat who fishes for his pet frog Froggy, the E100 series of robots, Shadow, a brooding black hedgehog, Rouge, a treasure hunting bat, Blaze, a cat from an alternate dimension, and Silver, a telekinetic hedgehog from the future. The Chow creatures function as digital pets and minor gameplay elements. And Wisp creatures function as power-ups. Freaky, the blue bird from Sega's 1984 arcade game, appears in several Sonic games, most notably the 3D Blast. Some Sonic characters have featured in spin-offs games. Eggman is featured as a character in Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine, the Western localization of Pew Pew. Sega replaced the Pew Pew characters with Sonic characters because it feared that Pew Pew would not be popular with a Western audience. In 1995, Sega released the Knuckles spin-off, Knuckles Chaotix for the 32X, and the two Tails spin-offs for Game Gear, Tails Spy Patrol, a scrolling shooter, and Tails Adventure, a Metroidvania game. Shadow the Hedgehog, which came out in 2005, was developed in response to the Shadow character's popularity and to introduce gun action gameplay into the franchise. Iizuka said that the future spin-offs, such as sequels to Knuckles and Chaotix and Shadow the Hedgehog, or a Big the Cat game, remain possibilities. When it comes to gameplay, the Sonic series is characterized by speed platforming gameplay. Controlling the player character, the player navigates the series of levels at high speeds while jumping between platforms, fighting enemies and bosses, and avoiding obstacles. The series contains both 2D and 3D games. 2D entries generally feature a simple pinball-like gameplay, while jumping and attacking controlled by a single button, and branching level paths that require memorization to maintain speed. Meanwhile, the 3D entries tend to be more customizable to the player character. Gamers since Sonic Unleashed have blended 2D and 3D gameplay, with the camera shifting between side-scrolling and third-person perspectives. One distinctive game mechanic of Sonic games are collectible golden rings spread throughout levels, which act like a form of health. Players possessing rings can survive upon sustaining damage, but the rings are scattered in the power, and the player has a short amount of time to recollect some of them before they disappear. Collecting 100 rings usually rewards the player an extra life. Players have other uses in certain games, such as a currency in Sonic of 06, restoring health bars in Sonic Unleashed, or improving statistics in Sonic Riders. Levels on Sonic games feature elements such as slopes, bottomless pits, and vertical loops, springs, springboards, dash panels scattered throughout the capital of the various games, such as entering bonus stages. Players progress through levels and save through passing checkpoints, and checkpoints serve other uses in various games, such as the bonus stages. Some settings, most notably Green Hill Zone, reoccur throughout the series. The series contains numerous power-ups which are held in boxes that appear throughout levels. An icon indicates what it contains, and the player releases the item destroying the box. Common items in boxes include rings, a shield, invincibility, high speed, and extra lives. Sonic Colors introduces the Wisps, a race of extraterrestrial creatures that act as power-ups. Each Wisp has its own special ability corresponding with its color. For instance, yellow Wisps allow players to drill underground and find otherwise inaccessible areas. In most Sonic games, the goal is to collect Chaos Emeralds. The player is required to collect them all in order to defeat Eggman and achieve the game's good endings. Sonic games that do not feature the Chaos Emeralds, such as Sonic CD, feature different collectibles that otherwise function the same. Players find the emeralds by entering portals, opening portals using 50 rings, or scouting them within levels themselves. Sometimes the emeralds are collected automatically as the story progresses. By collecting the emeralds, players are rewarded with their character's super form and activate it by collecting 50 rings in the stage. The super transformations grant the player character more speed, a farther jump, and invincibility, but the ring count drains by the second. Transformation lasts until all rings have been used. Some games require the player to collect all the Chaos Emeralds in order to reach the final boss. Sonic games often share basic gameplay, but have game mechanics that distinguish them from others. For instance, Knuckles' Chaotix is similar to previous entries in the series, but introduces a partner system whereas the player is connected to another character via a tether. The tether behaves and transforms into a werewolf-like beast and must fight enemies, using brute strength. Both Sonic and the storybook games feature a unique concept. Secret rings control the exclusivity using Wii Remote's motion detection, while Black Knight incorporates hack and slash gameplay, while some games feature Sonic as the only playable character. Others feature multiple, who have alternate movesets and storylines. For instance, in Sonic and Knuckles, Knuckles goes through the same levels as Sonic, but his story is different. He explores different parts of the levels in certain areas that are more difficult. Many Sonic games contain multiplayer and cooperative gameplay, beginning with the Sonic the Hedgehog 2 in some games. If the player chooses to control Sonic and Tails together, the second player can join in at any time and control Tails separately. Sonic games will also feature a split-screen competitive mode in which two players can race at the end of a stage. When it comes to music, for the main original score of Sonic the Hedgehog, Sega commissioned Masato Nakamura, bassist and songwriter of the J-pop brand Dreams Come True, to compose the soundtrack. Nakamura returned to compose Sonic 2's soundtrack. Dreams Come True owns the right to Nakamura's score, which created problems with the Sonic soundtrack. Created problems with the Sonic Spinball team because they used the theme without permission. For Sonic CD, two soundtracks were composed. The original featured the Japanese and European releases, was composed by Noifumi Hayata and Masafumi Ogata, while the North American score was composed by Spencer Nielsen and David Young and Mark Crew. A number of composers contributed to the Sonic the Hedgehog 3 score, including Sonic's sound staff and independent contractors recruited to the finish of the game's schedule. According to conflicting resources, American pop musician Michael Jackson, Sonic fan, composed music for Sonic 3. Oshiyama and Hector said Jackson's involvement was terminated and his music removed following the first allegations of sexual abuse against him, but composers involved with the project said that his contributions remained. Sonic 3 was the first Sonic game composer John Sinew worked on. Sinew was composed for the music for many Sonic games since Sonic 3D Blast, often with his band Crush 40, in which he performed with hardline vocalist Johnny Growley. While the Genesis Sonic soundtracks were characterized by electric pop, Sinew's scores typically feature funk and rock music. Toyoma Ohanti has been in the series' sound director since Sonic the Hedgehog in 2006 and was the lead composer for the games Sonic Unleashed, Sonic Colors, and Sonic Lost World, Sonic Runners, and Sonic Forces. Ohanti said that the attempts to express through music was the greatest features that the game has, calling it diverse and an energetic score of Sonic Unleashed and the more science fiction style score of Sonic Colors as examples. Other composers who have contributed to Sonic games include Richard Jacques and Hideki Nakamura. T. Lopes, known for releasing unofficial remixes of Sonic and tracks on YouTube, was the lead composer for Sonic Mania and the contributor for Team Sonic Racing. The main theme in the 2006 Sonic the Hedgehog was performed by Ali Tabatanabe and Matty Lewis of the band Zebrahead, while Akon remixed Sweet 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 Frontiers Vandalize was performed by the Japanese rock band One Ok Rock. Now, in other forms of media, we've had all sorts of crossovers. So outside of the Sonic series, Sonic appears in other Sonic team games such as playable characters in Christmas Nights, which came out in 1996, a power-up in Billy Hatcher and the Giant Egg, which came out in 2003, and in a cameo since 2008's Wii version in Samba de Amigo, which came out in 2009. Sonic characters also feature in the Sega All-Stars series, which includes Sega Superstars, which came out in 2004, and Sega Superstars Tennis, which came out in 2008, and Sumo Digital kart racing games Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing, which came out in 2010, and Sonic All-Stars Racing Transform, which came out in 2012. Since 2007, Sega has collaborated with former rival Nintendo to produce Mario and Sonic. An Olympic game themed crossover with the Mario franchise and the first Mario and Sonic game was released in 2007 with the Wii and in 2008 with the DS tie-in with the 2008 Summer Olympics. Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Winter Games, based on the 2010 Winter Olympics, was released in 2010 for the Wii U and DS, and Mario and Sonic at the London of 2012 Olympic Games based it on the 2012 Summer Olympics and was released for the Wii in 2011 and the 3DS in 2012. The fourth game, 2013 Mario and Sonic at the Sonic Sochi 2014 Winter Olympic Games, was exclusive to the Wii U, but the following game, Mario and Sonic at the Rio 2016 Olympic Games, which came out in 2016 for the Switch, was released for both the Wii U and the 3DS. After a brief hiatus, the series made a return in 2019 with Mario and Sonic Olympic Games Tokyo 2020 for the Switch, based on the 2020 Summer Olympics. Sonic appears as a playable character in Nintendo's Super Smash Bros. Crossover fighting games, beginning with Super Smash Bros. Brawl in 2008, alongside with Solid Snake from Konami's Metal Gear Solid franchise. Sonic was the first non-Nintendo character to appear in Smash, and he was considered for an inclusion in Super Smash Bros. Melee in 2001, but the game was too close to completion, so introduction was delayed until Brawl. He returned in the sequel Super Smash Bros. For Nintendo 3DS and Wii U, which came out in 2014, and Super Smash Bros. Ultimate in 2018. Shadow and Knuckles appear in Smash as non-playable characters, while Tails and Knuckles costumes are available for players' Mii avatars. A Sonic Amiibo figurine was released for the Smash games, and was also compatible with Mario Kart 8, which came out in 2014, Super Mario Maker, which came out in 2015, and Yoshi's Woolly World in 2015. In June of 2015, characters from the Angry Birds RPG, Angry Birds Epic in 2014, appeared as playable characters in Sonic Dash during a 3-week promotion. While Sonic was added to Angry Birds Epic as a playable character, the following September, the similar crossovers with the scenario characters Hello Kitty, Bad Smaru, My Melody, and Choco Cat, and the Namco game Pac-Man took place in December of 2016. In February of 2018, in November of 2016, a Sonic expansion pack was released for the Toys to Life game LEGO Dimensions, which came out in 2015. The pack includes Sonic as a playable character in addition to Sonic levels and vehicles. In September of 2021, Sonic and Tails became playable characters in Cookie Run Kingdom. When it comes to animation, in 1992, Sega approached the American Broadcasting Company, or ABC, about producing 2 television series: a syndicated show for the after-school audience, and a Saturday morning cartoon based off of Sonic. Kawasaki had seen now instrumental the launch of He-Man that Masters of the Universe cartoon series was to the success of the toy line during this time at Mattel, and he believed that the success could be recreated using Sonic. The 2 cartoons, the syndicated Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, which came out in 1993, and ABC's Sonic the Hedgehog, which was from 1993 to 1994, were produced by DIC Entertainment. DIC also produced Sonic Christmas Special, which came out in 1996, and Sonic Underground, which came out in 1999, to promote Sonic Adventure. DIC's Sonic adaptations are generally not held in high regard. Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog comprises 65 episodes overseen by Ren and Stimpy, director Kent Butterworth, and features slapstick humor in the vein of Looney Tunes. The 26-episode Sonic the Hedgehog, commonly called Sonic Sat AM, features a bleak setting in which Eggman has conquered the world, while Sonic is a member of a resistance force that opposes him. The series was cancelled after 2 seasons. Sonic Underground was planned as the last 65 episodes, but only 40 were produced. The series follows Sonic and his siblings, Manic and Sonia, who use the power of music to fight Eggman and reunite with their mother. In all 3 DIC series, Sonic is voiced by Family Matters star Jaleel White. In Japan, Sega and Sonic team collaborated with Studio Harriot to produce a 2-part original video animation, OVA, Sonic the Hedgehog, released direct-to-video in Japan in 1996. To coincide with Sonic Adventure's Western release in 1999, ADV Films released an OVA in North America as the 56-minute film. Sonic the Hedgehog the Movie. Produced with input with Naka and Oshima, the OVA is loosely based off of Sonic CD, with elements from Sonic the Hedgehog 2 and 3, and recounts Sonic's efforts to stop a generator taken over by Eggman from exploding and destroying their world. Patrick Lee of the AV Club said that OVA was the only cartoon to adapt the look, sound, and feel of the Sonic games, and familiar scenes and music. Sonic X, an anime series, was produced by TMS Entertainment and overseen by Naka, ran the 3 stations, 78 episodes, from 2003 to 2006. While previous series episodes feature self-contained pilots, or plots, Sonic X tells a singularized story. The Sonic cast teleports from their home planet to Earth during a scuffle with Eggman, where they meet a human boy, Chris Thorndike. Throughout the course of the series, Sonic and his friends attempt to return to their world while fighting Eggman. The second season adapts the Sonic Adventure games and Sonic Battle, while the third season sees the friends return to Chris to their world, where they enter outer space and fight an army of aliens. Some critics enjoyed Sonic X, while others disliked it. Although it suffered from poor ratings in Japan, Sonic X consistently topped ratings for its time slot in the US and in France. Sonic Boom, a computer animated series produced by Sega and Janao Productions, premiered on Cartoon Network on November of 2014. It features a satirical take on the Sonic mythos, and the franchise cast was redesigned for it. According to Iizuka, Sonic Boom came out as a desire to appeal to a Western audience, and it ran parallel with the main Sonic franchise. Sonic Boom lasted for 2 seasons, and the last episode aired in 2017. In May of 2020, Sega brand officer Ivo Girsovich stated that no further episodes of Sonic Boom would be produced. To promote the release of Sonic Mania Plus, which came out in 2018, a 5-part series of animated shorts, Sonic Mania Adventures, was released on the Sonic the Hedgehog YouTube channel between March 30th and July 17th in 2018. The series depicts Sonic's return to his world following the events of Sonic Forces, teaming with his friends to prevent Eggman and Metal Sonic from collecting the Chaos Emeralds and Master Emerald. An additional Christmas-themed episode was released on December 21st in 2018. The shorts were written and directed by Tyson Hesse, who created Sonic Mania's opening cutscene. Similarly, Hesse produced a 2-part animated series to tie in with the release of Team Sonic Racing in 2019. Sonic and Tails also appear as guest stars in Oko, Let's Be Heroes in August of 2019. Sonic Prime, a computer animated Sonic series, is available on Netflix. The series is co-produced by Netflix Animation, Sega of America, Wild Brain Studios, and Man of Action Entertainment, and premiered on December of 2022. Sonic was also in comics. So, Shouju Kakan produced a Sonic the Hedgehog manga series in its Shoujo Yensei magazine beginning in 1992. Written by Kenji Terada and illustrated by Sango Norimoto, it follows the sweet but cowardly young hedgehog named Nikki, whose alter ego is the cocky, heroic Sonic. According to the character artist Hoshino, the manga was part of Sega's promotional strategy to appeal to primary school children. Sonic design team worked with Shoujukan to create new characters. Amy Rose and Charmy B originated in the manga before appealing to the games. The longest-running Sonic-based publication in the 290 issue Sonic the Hedgehog, an American comic book published by Archie Comics from 1993 until its cancellation in 2017. Archie also produced or published a number of spin-offs such as Knuckles the Echidna, which was from 1997 to 2000, and Sonic and the Sonic Universe, which was from 2009 to 2017. Archie's comic drew its premise from the Sonic the Hedgehog television series, with Sonic and a resistance force fighting the dictator Eggman. Originally written as a straightforward, lighthearted action comedy, Sonic the Hedgehog became more of a dramatic after Ken Penders began writing it with an issue series. Ian Flynn became the head writer in 2006 and remained until the series' cancellation. Following the legal battle with Penders over ownership of characters he created, in 2013 the series was rebooted, leaving only characters introduced in the games which predated Penders' run. In 2008, Guinness World Book of Records recognized Archie's Sonic the Hedgehog's longest-running comic based on a video game, and by 2016 it was the longest-running American comics on the market. While Archie planned to publish at least 4 issues beyond number 290, in January of 2017, the series went on an abrupt hiatus, and in July, Sega announced that it was ending its business relationship with Archie in favor of a new partnership with IDW Publishing. IDW's Sonic comic began in April of 2018, although the creative teams from the Archie series, such as Flynn, returned. The IDW series sent in a different continuity. Flynn in the IDW series differs from the Archie comic in that it draws from the game's 4 stories. With the first story arc set after the events of Sonic Forces, fans continued the Archie series unofficially, including finishing unpublished issues, while Penders is using the characters he gained ownership for a graphic novel, the Lara Sue Chronicles. Sonic and Comic British Comic published the Fleet Away publications ran for 223 issues from 1993 to 2002. Contributors included Richard Elson, Nigel Kitching, and Andy Diggy, and Nigel Dobbin. It features stories aimed at children, in addition to news and review sections. Although it adapted stories from the games, the writers established their own lore. While final story arc was Lou's adaptation of Sonic Adventure in 2000, followed by 39 issues reprinting old stories. Following the series cancellation, fans started Sonic Comic Online, an unofficial web comic that continues the stories. Live action film franchises began in August of 1994. Sega of America signed a deal with Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer Pictures and Trilogy Entertainment to produce a live-action animated film to tie in with Sonic Extreme. In May of 1995, screenwriter Richard Jeffries published a treatment, Sonic the Hedgehog, Wonders of the World, to Sega. It saw Sonic and Eggman escape from Sonic Extreme into the real world, and Sonic collaborate with the boy to stop Eggman. No agreement was reached, and that the film was cancelled. With permission from Sega, Jeffries pitched this treatment to DreamWorks Animation, but it was rejected. Sonic the Hedgehog in 2020. In 2013, Sony Pictures Entertainment acquired the Sonic film rights, and in June of 2014 announced that it would produce a Sonic film as a joint venture with Sega's Marza Animation project. Neil H. Moritz was attached to produce it under its original banner, alongside Takeshi Yodo, Maya Oshini, and Toku Nakahara. In February of 2016, Sega CEO Hajime Satomi said the film was scheduled for 2018. Blur Studios' Tim Miller and Jeff Frower were hired the following October to develop the film. Fowler would take his feature directorial debut, while both were executive producers. In October of 2017, Paramount Pictures acquired the rights after Sony put the film into turnaround. However, most of the production team remained unchanged, and principal photography began in September of 2018 in Ladysmith, British Columbia. The film, written by Patrick Casey and Josh Miller, follows Sonic, voiced by Ben Schwartz, as he journeys into San Francisco with a small-town cop, James Marston, so he can escape Eggman, played by Jim Carrey, and collect his missing rings. Additional cast members include Tika Sumpter, Adam Pally, and Neil McDonough, while Colleen O'Shaughnessy reprises her voice for the role from Tales from the Games and mid-credits scene cameo. Sonic was originally designed to be more realistic, with fur, new running shoes, separate eyes, and a more human-like physique. The design triggered a backlash and was criticized for not resembling the game design, and provoked the Uncanny Valley type of repulsed response from viewers. As such, Sonic was revised to better resemble the original design. Paramount originally scheduled Sonic the Hedgehog for a November 8th of 2019 release, but delayed it to February 14, 2020 due to accommodate the redesign. The film received generally positive reviews from critics who felt it exceeded the low expectations typically associated with video game-based films. Carrey's performance in particular was praised. Criticism was directed at a perceived lack of originality or ambition, and while Sonic's second redesign was praised, some felt it set a negative precedent to the film industry by giving fans the power to influence the filmmakers. With an estimated budget of $81 to $95 million, The film grossed over $310 million worldwide, becoming the 6th highest grossing film of 2020 in March, and it became the highest grossing film based on a video game in US box office history. Sonic Hedgehog 2 would come out in 2022, and Sonic the Hedgehog 2 was announced in May of 2020, and principal photography began in March of 2021. It features Sonic and Tails attempting to stop Eggman with Knuckles' help from the finding the Master Emerald. Schwartz, O'Shaughnessy, Marson, Carey, and Sumper reprise their roles from the first film, while Idris Elba voices Knuckles. Much of the crew, including Fowler, Casey, and Josh Miller, returned. Sonic 2 incorporates more aspects of the Sonic games than the first film, including Chaos Emeralds and Super Sonic. It adopts plot elements from Sonic 2 and Sonic 3 and introduces Shadow in the mid-credits scene. Sonic the Hedgehog 2 was released of April 8th of 2022. It received positive reviews and grossed over $402 million worldwide, surpassing its predecessor as the highest grossing video game film in the US. Future. In February of 2022, Paramount and Sega announced that they were working on a Sonic cinematic universe, with Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and a Knuckles streaming series for Paramount Plus in development. Elba is set to reprise his role in the series for Knuckles. Merchandise. Licensed Sonic merchandise includes books, clothing, soundtracks, board games, and toys such as figures and plushes. By 2004, the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise had generated more than $1 billion in licensed merchandise sales. Sega and McDonald's collaborated for Sonic-themed Happy Meal promotions in 1994 for Sonic 3 and in 2004 for Sonic Heroes. Sonic was the first video game franchise promoted in McDonald's, and over 50 million Sonic Happy Meal toys were sold worldwide. 1 million pairs of Sonic trousers were sold by 1996. First Four Figures has produced a large number of vinyl resin Sonic games since 2008. In January of 2012, Sega and RHM Solutions opened an online Sonic store, while PlayStation Gear began selling Sonic items in December of 2017. Sega and the LEGO Group collaborated to produce a Green Hill Zone logo set in 2021 after it was suggested on LEGO Ideas in 2019. Commentary. The Sonic platformers released during the 1990s were acclaimed and have been raised among the greatest video games of all time. The original Sonic was touted a faster and cooler alternative to Nintendo's Super Mario World, which came out in 1990. According to Kotaku's Zolandi Stewart, Sonic's rebellious character was representative of the culture of the 1990s, when the idea of individual rebellion seemed inextricably linked to consumer culture. Writing The Guardian, Keith Stewart observed that Sonic the Hedgehog's emphasis on speed departed from accepted perceipts of game design, recurring the players learn through repetition rather than observation, and the levels aren't designed to be seen or even understood in one playthrough. Sonic is incorrect game design, and yet it's a masterpiece. Sonic 2, Sonic 3D, and Sonic 3 and Sonic & Knuckles were praised for building on the first game's formula. In 1996, Next Generation described them as the Zeitgeist of the 16-bit era. After the uneventful Saturn era, the series found renewed popularity during the 6th generation of video game consoles. Sonic Adventure, though criticized for its glitches and camera system, was acclaimed for its visuals, spectacle, and varied gameplay. Sonic Adventure 2 was met with similar praise. However, journalists began to feel the series was straying from its roots, with some commenting that Sonic Adventure failed to reinvent Sonic for the 3D era, as Super Mario 64 had for Mario. Stewart argued that the addition of voice acting and greater focus on plot changed Sonic into a flat, lifeless husk of a character who spits out slogans and generally has only one personality mode. The radical attitude dude, they said, recycled image of vague 90s cultural concept. Edwin Evans Throat of Eurogamer agreed, writing that Mario's plucky earnestness and whimsy will always enjoy a longer shelf life than Sonic's overcompensatory edginess. After the Dreamcast, the series' critical standing declined. Evans Thirtwell summarized further 3D Sonic games as 20-odd years of slowly accumulating bullshit. Although reviews for Sonic Heroes were mostly favorable, Stewart said that this was when the focus of the story and cutscenes became unbearable. Shadow the Hedgehog was widely criticized as a misguided attempt to bring a sense of maturity to the franchise, and Sonic 06 was critically panned. And Sonic Mania, developed by Christian Whitehead, said that the changes to the Sonic formula stemmed from a perhaps misplaced desire to continue to push Sonic as a AAA brand. Journalist Whitehead and the former Sega of America marketing director Al Nilsson criticized the number of characters added to the series, which Naka had justified as necessary to please fans. Evans Thirtwell argued that Sonic Team had never successfully translated the momentum-based gameplay of the Genesis games to 3D, and that unlike Mario, Sonic never had a 3D transcendental hit. Simon Parkin of The Guardian noted that whereas Mario creator Shinjiro Miyamoto reviews every Mario game prior to release, the individuals who had shaped Sonic, Naka, Oshimura, and Kearney, left Sega. Despite the critical decline, Dimp's side-scrolling Sonic games for the Game Boy Advance and DS were consistently praised, writing that Destructoid and Joy Sterling said, "Hyperbole states that we haven't had a good Sonic game since Sonic Adventure really betrays how much we gamers ignore the handheld market. Sonic Advance and the Sonic Rush games have often ranged from decent to superb, which makes one wonder why Dimps is in the B team and the inferior Sonic team is on the A team." And on the wake of 2006 in the Sonic the Hedgehog, Brett Easton of Games Radar Plus said that Sonic Rush Adventure managed to keep the series' spirit alive, while Sonic Unleashed was criticized for its addition of beat-em-up gameplay, which IGN's Hillary Goldstein remained had nothing to do with Sonic whatsoever. Its speed-based platforming levels were widely praised. Critics suggested that the game would have been better received if it had focused on them. In October of 2010, Sega delisted Sonic games with an average or below average scores on the review aggregator website Metacritic to increase the value of the brand and avoid confusing customers. That month, Sonic the Hedgehog 4 Episode 1 was released to the general praise, with Goldstein summarizing it as a short but sweet and well worth downloading. Sonic Colors, released shortly afterwards, was hailed as a return to form, and as was 2011 Sonic Generations. Though Evans Thirtwell considered Sonic Generations the best 3D Sonic game, he called it an admission of defeat for depicting the 2D and 3D incarnations of Sonic together only to remind us of their profound differences. Sonic's Lost World was released in 2013 to more mixed reviews, with some critics considering it a fresh take on the Sonic formula and others poorly redesigned mess. The two Sonic Boom games were received widespread negative reviews, and sold only 490,000 copies combined by February of 2015, making them the worst-selling Sonic games that year. That year, Izakura admitted that Sonic Team had prioritized shipping games over quality and did not have enough involvement in third-party Sonic games such as Sonic Boom. The Sega CEO, Hatori Satomi, acknowledged that Sega in general had partially betrayed the trust of the longtime fans and hoped to focus on quality over quantity. In June of 2015, the Sonic Public Relations Manager Aaron Weber took charge of the series' Twitter account. Under Weber, the account at Sonic the Hedgehog became renowned for posting internet memes and making self-depreciating comments about the Sonic franchise's critical decline. According to Allegra Frank Polygon, Weber had an important effect on the franchise, cultivating a new persona for the character, and one that has created a renewed sense of hope. The announcement of Sonic Mania in 2016 brought further hope for the Sonic franchise's future. Journalists described it as a true continuation of the Genesis games, succeeding where previous Sonic games such as Sonic Rush and Sonic 4 had failed. It became the best reviewed Sonic game in 15 years upon its August 2017 release. Matt Espinelli of GameSpot summarized it as exceeding expectations of what a new game in the franchise can look and play like, managing to simultaneously be a charming celebration of the past and a natural progression to the series' classic 2D formula. Many called it one of the best games in the series and expressed excitement for Sonic's future, although Sonic Forces, released a few months later, received mixed reviews. Now, when it comes to sales, Sonic the Hedgehog is one of the best-selling video game franchises. The series' cumulative sales reached 89 million units by March of 2011 and over 140 million units by 2016. The Mario Sonic series alone sold over 19 million units as of 2011. Sonic the Hedgehog video games grossed over 5 billion in sales by 2014 and over 6 billion sales by 2020. The series' sales and free-to-play mobile game downloads totaled 920 million units by 2019 and over 1.14 billion units by 2020. In 1993, Sonic was tied to Mario as the highest earning entertainment personalities of the year, each generating 500 million and 940 million adjusted for inflation in digital game sales that year. In the United Kingdom, Sonic was the 6th best-selling game franchise between 1996 and 2012. Individual Sonic games have been bestsellers as well. The original game is the best-selling Genesis game, while Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is the best-selling Game Gear game. Sonic CD is the best-selling Sega CD game, and Sonic Adventure 1 is the best-selling Dreamcast game. Sonic Adventure 2 is the 8th best-selling GameCube game in the US and the best-selling GameCube game that was not published by Nintendo. Upon release, Sonic the Hedgehog 2 set records for being the fastest-selling game, selling out 3.2 million copies worldwide within 2 weeks in 1992. In terms of sales revenue, the original Sonic the Hedgehog earned over 400 million by 1997, which is 800 million adjusted for inflation, while Sonic the Hedgehog 2 grossed 450 million in 1992, which is 870 million adjusted for inflation. The latter being the highest grossing home entertainment product of 1992. Now, with its effect on the industry, primarily because of the Genesis bundling, Sonic the Hedgehog contributed greatly to the console's popularity in North America between October and December of 1991. The Genesis outsold its chief competitor, the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, by 2-to-1 ratio. At its January 1992 peak, Sega held 65% of the market for 16-bit consoles. Although Nintendo eventually reclaimed the number one position, it was the first time since December of 1985 that Nintendo had not led the console market. OneUp.com credited Sonic for turning the course of the 16-bit console wars, helping make Sega a dominant player and industry giant. During the 16-bit era, Sonic inspired similar platformers starring animal mascots, including Bubsy series, Arrow the Acrobat, James Pond 3, Earthworm Jim, and Zero the Kamikaze Squirrel. Animal with an Attitude games carried over into the 3D era with developers of Gex, came out in 1985, and Crash Bandicoot 1996, citing Sonic as a major inspiration. According to Levi Burchin of IGN, Sonic inspired so many of these copycats that they particularly became an entire subgenre of the platformer. Thorpe commented, as it is hard to keep track of how many programmers have cited Sonic the Hedgehog as a bar against which they have measured their work. While Phil Hornshaw of Complex noted that the few animal mascot characters achieved the same success as Sonic regarding the series' influence on the video game industry, Thorpe wrote, "Every E3 conference dig can be tracked back to the console war that truly fired up when Sonic and Mario were put side by side. Every time console gamers have pushed to obtain an older target age group, that's something that Sonic was on the leading edge of, and broadening demographics has been important to the growth of the games industry, whether for reasons of content or appeal. 5 years prior to the coordinated international launch of Sonic 2, your gaming experience depended heavily on where you lived. These days, the same-day global launches and region-free consoles seems like a lifetime ago. And of course, every time you buy DLC, you might want to spare a thought for Sonic and Knuckles. And yes, of course, of all that is to say nothing of the legion of mascot platform games that came from the wake of Sonic's series." Computer and Video Games CVG magazine also credited Sonic the Hedgehog with helping to popularize console video games in the United Kingdom, where home computers previously dominated the home video game market. They said that the success of Sonic the Hedgehog was one of the main reasons for the popularity of console video games in the United Kingdom. As far as cultural impact goes, one of the world's most popular video game characters of the 1992 Sonic was more recognizable to children of ages 6 to 11 than Disney's Mickey Mouse. In 1993, Sonic became the first video game character to have a balloon on Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, and he was one of the 4 characters inducted into the Walk of Fame in 2005, alongside Mario, Link, and Master Chief. Additionally, a Japanese team developing the radio and plasma wave investigation RPWI instrumentation for the Jupiter Icy Moons Explorer spacecraft to be launched by ESA and Airbus in 2023 received approval to use Sonic as the mascot. Sonic and Eggman appear as minor characters in the Walt Disney Animation Studios film Wreck-It Ralph, which came out in 2012, and Ralph Breaks the Internet, which came out in 2018, while Sonic makes cameos in Steven Spielberg's Ready Player One in 2018 and Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers in 2022. The franchise is known for its eccentric and passionate fandom, which produces unofficial media, including fan games, fan fiction, modifications, and ROM hacks of existing games, fan films, and fan art. Patty McCarthy of US Gamer noted that many fans have continued to support this series in spite of poorly received games. Like the US Gamer noted, many fans have continued to support the series since 2006 Sonic the Hedgehog, and she credited the fandom with helping maintain public interest in the franchise. Notable Sonic 4 games include Sonic After Sequel in 2013, set between the events of Sonic the Hedgehog 2 and Sonic the Hedgehog 3, and Sonic Dreams Collection in 2015, which satirizes the series fandom. Sonic Mania's development team included individuals who had worked on Sonic ROM hacks and fan games, while Iizuka said the character customization system of Sonic Forces was influenced by the Sonic's community's tendency to create original characters. Summer of Sonic, an annual fan convention dedicated to the Sonic series and hosted to the United Kingdom, was founded by Ben Jocelyn and Adam Tuff and first held in 2008. Sonic has inspired various internet memes, which have been acknowledged by Sega and referenced in games. Sonic Hedgehog, a crude Sonic drawn in Microsoft Point, originated in 2010. Typically, the meme uses one of Sonic's catchphrases, but with poor grammar. The Sonic Twitter account has made numerous references to it, and it appeared that official downloadable content for Sonic Forces on in-game shorts and as a visual gag on the Sonic the Hedgehog film. Sonic also inspired many memes and parodies and was described by William Mako of Sci-Fi Wire as perfect proof of the twisted love and appreciation many have for Sonic. In January of 2018, players flooded the virtual reality game VR Chat with avatars depicting unbranded Knuckles, a deformed version of Knuckles, and the Echidna. The character stemmed from a 2017 review of Sonic Lost World by YouTube user Gregzilla, as well as fans of PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds streamer Forsen, who often reference the African country Uganda. The Ugandan response: the Sonic Twitter account encouraged players to respect others and donate to a Ugandan charity through global giving. The Sonic the Hedgehog game, first identified for its role in fruit fly embryonic development, was named after Sonic. Robert Riddle, then a postdoctoral fellow in the Tabin lab, came up with the name after his wife brought a magazine containing an advert for Sonic, a mutation in the gene that causes fly larvae to bear spiky denticles reminiscent of Sonic. So, after all of that research and sharing that with you, it just goes to show that even through its ups and downs, Sonic has been throughout the years very commercially and financially successful, as well as unsuccessful. But at the end of the day, Sonic's popularity is still around, it's still alive, and a lot of fans, despite all of the games that also did not succeed, a lot of fans actually support the game quite well. And I'm actually glad, because it only increases the chances of more good games coming out at some point in time in the future. Sonic Frontiers is actually a really good indicator of that. And hopefully, in the very near future, we actually get to see like an open world Sonic game that's even better than Sonic Frontiers and learns from the mistakes that Sonic Frontiers made and end up developing that next that next gen Sonic game that the fans of Sonic the Hedgehog truly deserve. And as far as I'm concerned, Sonic Mania was the last Sonic game that I played, and I have to say that it did bring back a lot of memories. And when it comes to Sonic, you really can't help but always think of its origins when you play it. At least I can't. I mean, I'm 38 years old. I've been playing games for over 30 years. Sonic was one of the first game franchises that I played, and it always holds a true memory to my heart. It truly does. So, in concluding this commentary, as my nose gets continuously stuffy, I have to say that after all this research and after all this reading, I'm actually genuinely surprised of just how popular this franchise really is. And you really just can't underestimate people's loyalty to a character once that character has been established to be legit. Granted, they've gone in every single direction, but they've realized that a lot of directions that they headed in were just not right. And through a lot of years and a lot of time, they realized that it wasn't right. So now they have the biggest chance to make things right. And the fact that Sonic Frontiers, that came out in 2022, was for the most part a success, hopefully is a testament to that. And hopefully in the near future games we get to see things that are even better and take Sonic's potential to new heights, because Sonic has the same amount of potential as Mario, in my opinion. It just has yet to be executed as correctly. And I think that we may be at a turning point to where that can start to become a thing. It can start to become fruition. So anyway, with that being said, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you guys learned a lot about Sonic that you may have not known before, because I know I sure as hell did upon reading this. So let me know, what was your first Sonic adventure, or your first Sonic experience? Which Sonic game is your favorite if you have one? And let me know what you guys think. I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.